All right. Today's readings is from the Gospel of Robert Fulghum, who is a Unitarian minister. Many of you may be familiar with his works. One of his works was called "All I Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten," or something close to that. In that book, we were advised to hold hands when crossing the street, drink warm milk, eat cookies, and take naps. This book was interesting how it came about. He was preaching in his church in Seattle, and he preached a sermon based on that. And after the service, some people said, "Gee, that was a great sermon, Reverend Fulghum. Would you provide us with the highlights of your service?" And so his highlights were typed up on a single piece of paper and distributed by mimeograph. That tells you how long ago that happened. It's a long time ago. And one of those pieces of paper wound up on somebody's refrigerator, and they had a visitor from New York who was in the publishing business. And that woman saw that paper and thought, "Gee, that sounds like a book." So they approached him, and he wrote the book, and as they say, the rest is history. He started writing books. He's written many books, sold 100 million copies, and he's been very successful. Needless to say, he's no longer a minister. So if anybody wants a copy of this sermon after the service, especially if you know somebody in the publishing industry. In the mid-90s, the last time I was here at the pulpit, most of you weren't here, but we did a service based on his book, which was called From Beginning to End, Rituals of Our Lives. And we dramatized what was considered a model memorial service. And it was a lot of fun. Some of those people, a couple of those people that were there then are here now. But I figured it's been a long time, and so I can repeat myself, and most of you won't realize it. So today we're going to read some of his stories from this book. About a year ago, I was in Florida at this time, enjoying life, and I came across this book that he wrote called True Love. And I picked it up and I re-condoized it and woke it up. And the book said to me, "Rick, it's time for you to do another service." And so here I am. Reverend Fulghum now lives in many places. One of them, he still lives in Seattle next to an elementary school. And he overheard a conversation between a mother and a child, and the mother was kind of upset. And she said, "Johnny, what on earth have you done?" And he got another idea for a book, which is called "What on Earth Have I Done?" And so I'm planning to do that book in another 20 years. I'll be here. I hope you will be too. Anyway, today Thursday will be Valentine's Day, and our theme today is true love in all its many forms. Tell me a love story, not one you've read or heard, one that you've lived. For several years, Fulghum asked his friends and strangers to tell him love stories. Mail poured in, from teenagers ecstatic from the pain of first love, from elderly scrawled out on sacred memories, from retirement homes, from those who treasure a small forever based on a 10-second encounter, and from those whose love would be measured in a lifetime of heartbeats. Here's his story. Intrigued by the mail, I went looking for love stories for those who don't like to write or have time. I made up a sign, "Tell me a love story, and I will buy you a cup of coffee and make you famous." And he went around to coffee houses, bars, neighborhood fairs, and whatnot around Seattle. In addition to that, like I said earlier, he had actually, in the book I read, it was titled "Uh-Oh," requested people to send love stories in, so that's how he got the mail. We are going to tell you some of those stories now. Some stories begin in an ordinary way and end with a surprise. So surprising, in fact, that you may not find yourself wondering if the stories are really true. I believe them. I know too much about real love not to. So Lynn will read the first story.
When I was a junior in college, I took a course in the writing of D.H. Lawrence. I know this sounds really stupid, but I thought this was about Lawrence of Arabia, you know, the eccentric British desert warrior guy. I had seen the movie and I wanted to be him. I was not fully alert in college. I went down to the local used bookstore to get everything they had. I was a little surprised by the titles: The Rainbow, Women in Love, Sons and Lovers, Lady Chatterley's Lover. There was a side of Lawrence of Arabia I didn't know about. The clerk explained. Whoa, bad news. But I had registered for the course, and now I had the books, and I needed the credits, so I was stuck. I went home to read. Like a lot of college students, I bought used books hoping someone else would have already underlined the important stuff. The Lawrence books I bought were thoroughly underlined, and when I flipped through and read some of the paragraphs about making out, I was blown away. This was really hot stuff. To hell with the other Lawrence and his desert. This Lawrence was my kind of guy. And I figured that any girls who were taking this course would be my kind of girls. All the books I had bought had some female name in the front. I figured this girl must have taken the course and then sold the books. She really knew what to underline. Not only the juicy parts, but the really beautiful passages that were about love, not just sex. I looked her name up in the telephone book, and she was there. I figured I'd just call her up and see what happened. I was hoping for anything from a date to copies of papers she had written. College guys play all the angles. I called her up, introduced myself, and told her what I wanted. Whoa again. She was not a girl, but a retired college professor of English literature. These books were extras she had sold when she moved to a smaller apartment. She laughed and said she would be glad to have a date with me, and she would explain about Lawrence and tell me how to pass the course. We liked each other right away. She lived alone, and her eyes were failing. She said if I would drive her to the grocery store once a week, she would tutor me in Lawrence. During the semester, she woke me up about love and sexuality and women. I spent a lot of time with her. I'm a better man because of her. A long time later, I told her if she had been 20 instead of 70, I would have asked her to marry me. She said she would have accepted. She's dead now. I still have her books and her wisdom and her kind of love. I got an A in the course, too.
That's sweet.
When Rick gave me the book to read, I was going through it, and there were so many stories of young love, but this one particular story touched me so that the tears were streaming down my face. It is an end-of-life love story. A very old man, George, who had been placed in a nursing home by his family, was a sad case. Nobody ever came to see him. One day, he stopped talking and refused to leave his room. He was cooperative enough with the staff and functional enough to take care of himself. He continued to eat and bathe, but he became a mute recluse, sitting alone in his room, in his rocking chair, all day, staring out the window. The staff decided he had a right to live as he wished, so they let him be. A woman resident, Maggie, had taken an interest in George, and when he disappeared, she went in to visit with him. He didn't seem to mind, but he didn't respond. She had started working on a quilt, and over time, she moved her handiwork little by little into his room. She spent her days sewing and telling her life story while he sat staring out the window. She had been in vaudeville. She had a million stories and was very happy to have someone listen to her. Nobody knew what he thought. He sat and stared. He talked. She talked, rather. Months went by. When Maggie finished the quilt, it was put on display in the main lobby of the nursing home. Everyone said it was one of the most beautiful quilts they ever saw. She was especially proud, since it was the only quilt she had ever made. The same week the quilt was finished, George passed away. In the drawer of his nightstand, the staff found an envelope marked, "To be opened when I die." The note inside said only, "Tell Maggie I love her." When they told her, she cried as if her heart would break. She had loved him too. She had made the quilt just for him. And that's why George was buried, wrapped in Maggie's quilt. After my former husband, Terry, died, I found out that he had kept a photograph of me on his desk all these years. That photograph is being buried with him.
Thank you.
This is a story told by Marilyn in Tacoma. This is really my mother's love story. I asked her to tell you, but she's too shy. It's too good not to pass on. It explains why my brother and I say we owe our existence to peanuts. When she graduated from high school, my mother had everything going for her but one. She was pretty, smart, and came from a well-to-do family, but she was terminally shy, especially around men. Boys didn't like to take her out because she was so quiet. She went off to the same college her mother went to, and to please her mother, she agreed to be rushed by the same sorority. At the first rush party, she sat out of sight at one end of the room, in a corner by a table that had snacks on it. She ate a lot of peanuts out of nervousness. She began to notice a waiter who seemed to be as shy as she. He never said anything, but he was taking care of her. He kept her glass filled with punch, non-alcoholic punch, by the way, and kept her peanut bowl full. From time to time, Their eyes met, and they smiled at each other. When the dancing started and the party got rowdy, she walked into the kitchen and out the back door to escape. As she was going down the alley, she heard someone calling, "Wait, wait, please wait." It was the waiter, running down the alley after her with a paper bag in his hands. They stood in awkward silence, just smiling. Then he reached into the bag, pulled out a whole can of peanuts, and offered them to her, and said, "I only wish these were pearls." Then he ran back up the alley and into the sorority house. Well, one thing led to another. 25 years later, on the silver wedding anniversary of my mother and the waiter, my father, he gave her a sterling silver jar marked peanuts. She thought that was the gift and was really happy. But there was more. When she lifted the lid, inside was a string of pearls. No gift ever pleased her more.
It was over 4 years ago that I invited my mother to visit. She loved to travel. Knowing that my 83-year-old father would no longer agree to travel anywhere from their California home, she declined, kindly saying, no, he would never leave me. How prophetic those words. It was only a few months later when my mother was devastated with a severe stroke, leaving her paralyzed and unable to speak. Not responsive to our questions, but usually aware of my sister and my visits, and most especially my father. She now smiles at us when we arrive, often during visits, and sometimes in our little jokes and family stories. But she is unable to in any way take care of herself and has been in a nursing home ever since. And so has my father, not as a resident there, but as a daily, without fail visitor. Most every day, he's been there, feeding her, massaging her wasted muscles, reading to her, telling her stories of any news of distant friends and family, giving her back rubs, singing little songs, and showing her family photo albums, watching over her in every way he can to help her be more comfortable. My dad is 88 now and has become a legend at the nursing home because of his devotion. He has been with my mother every day since that terrible evening, the night of their 59th anniversary. She knows, you can tell from the way she looks at him, that he would never leave her. She wasn't willing to leave him either, even for a short visit. So it is with my dad, Raymond Govan, has taught me about devotion and caring, compassion, love, and duty. He has never been one to give advice, only examples with his life.
I was going through a rather devastating divorce. Shortly after I moved out of the apartment I had shared with my husband, I started seeing a man named Barry. He too was going through a divorce, and we clung to each other like needy children, praising each other and trying to repair the damage done to our torn and shredded egos. I began to feel warm for the first time in months, and the knot in my stomach began to straighten itself out. We had 2 months together, and then it was time for him to go to France for a long-planned sabbatical. He invited me to join him there. He would put me up while I was there if I could get the airfare. It was silly, out of the question. I was unemployed. My husband and I had had a business together, so I was out of a home, a marriage, and a job all at once. But like magic, one day, in the never-ending pile of bills, was a little notice from Continental Airlines informing me that I was very close to having the mileage to get me a certificate that would take me to Paris. Close, but not there. I called Texas, spoke to a frequent flyer representative, explained the whole situation and said that if she could find a way for me to get the mileage, she would be aiding and abetting true love. Well, that'll be the second time today, she said in her thick Texas accent. It turned out that the little commuter plane that flies from Boston to Cape Cod was a continental commuter. My parents live on Cape Cod, and I was already planning to go there for Christmas, although I usually took the bus from Boston's Logan Airport to Hanwich. Make your reservation for Paris now, she told me, and the minute you take those Cape Cod flights, send me your flight coupons and I will send you your ticket. Wow, I was going to Paris. I dined on it, lived on it, dreamed on it. The flight to my parents was uneventful, but the day of the return trip there was a blizzard. We called the Hyannis Airport. No answer. My dad drove me out there in that terrible snow. We're not flying today, the clerk at the desk said. But why don't you just hop on that bus? Flights are taking off from Boston. You don't understand, I said. If I don't fly out of here, I don't get to go to Paris. The clerk grinned and discussed my plight. Well, obviously, we'll just have to reschedule you on the next flight out of here. So I did. I went to Paris, had a lovely time, 5 days in Paris and 10 in Toulouse. The high point of the trip was a Thanksgiving dinner that Barry and I gave to honor the professors and their spouses who had been so kind to him. The preparation was a gas, trying to remember the Thanksgiving story as we had learned it in elementary school and translating it into French. The thrill of a scavenger hunt looking for Thanksgiving culinary ingredients in Toulouse in February, and the triumph of finding canned cranberries for cranberry sauce. It was a dinner to end all dinners, with everyone speaking each other's languages in varying degrees of skill, and ending by singing the folk songs of each country. I came back to the States. Shortly after Barry returned, he broke up with me, saying that he hadn't meant to get involved in an exclusive monogamous relationship so soon after his divorce. 6 months later, he was married. A year and a half later, they had a baby. I will always be grateful to him. He gave me 2 of the finest weeks of my life, and I think was as truthful as he knew how to be, given the utter confusion of being a post-divorce person. I have a lot of healing to do before I could begin to love someone out of wholeness and not emptiness. The love story is not about Barry, but about the clerk in Texas and the ones in Hyannis. All those strangers who were kind to me during those times. The lawyer who I went to with the final, lingering, hurtful issue, who made me laugh with a story from her own pain and then refused to charge me for our half-hour conversation. The fellow singer in the Minnesota chorale who treated me to champagne and carrot cake after a performance, the day the divorce was finalized. And the divorce mediator who called to check that I was okay after everything had been agreed upon. And on and on. When people we love are kind, there is always an expectation, or a hope anyway, that it will be reciprocated. But strangers gain nothing but an increase in the amount of kindness in the universe. I am grateful for that kind of love. Joan Oliver Goldsmith.
So this is Fulghum's commentary about that last story. He says, that last story was one of my favorites. Joan Goldsmith had a large and long view of love, and she knows that you don't always get what you want, but you can get some deeper understanding of yourself and other human beings while trying to get what you want. She knows that love may not really make the world go around, but you can often get around the world, or Paris, with love. We are not strangers when it comes to love. One of the reasons people in my neighborhood go to a local Sicilian restaurant is because of the sign on the wall there, The sign reads, "We reserve the right to serve only those people in love. Those people who have been in love, or those people who would like to be in love." It's hard to feel in an atmosphere created by that sign as a stranger. And it was easy to get love stories with such clarity and connection declared on the wall. Service has never been refused. The sign is inclusive. The only thing constant about love is its universality. The only thing universal about love is its inconstancy. These truths make co-conspirators out of strangers. Nobody knows or will ever know everything they need to know about love. Its elusiveness is part of what makes love seductive. Anyone who says they fully understand love is either lying, stupid, or deaf. One can only obey the great law of the heart that says, as long as you live, love one another and take the consequences. Amen. So, for closing, I thought I would read, this is a tribute to Carl. Carl used to say this frequently at the end of the sermon. When I was going through a really rough time, I was talking to Carl, and I said to Carl, you know, Carl, I sometimes feel like I'm going crazy. And he said the perfect thing to me. He said, you know, Rick, I talk to a lot of people, and I can tell you, when somebody tells me they think they're going crazy, they're usually not. And that made me feel pretty good. May your house be a place of happiness for all who enter it, a place where the old and young are renewed in each other's company, a place for growing, a place for music, a place for laughter. And when shadows and darkness fall within its rooms, may it still be a place of hope and strength for all who enter it, especially for those who may be entrusted to your care. May no person be alien to your compassion. May your family be the larger family of all humankind. And may those who are nearest to you and dearest to you constantly be enriched by the beauty and bounty of your love.
Please join hands as we extinguish our...
Join us for worship every Sunday at 10 a.m. at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Canandaigua, a welcoming congregation. We are located at 3024 Cooley Road, 4 miles west of South Main Street, Canandaigua, just north of the intersection with Routes 5 and 20. Look for the blue signs just before the turn. Your comments about this program or questions about the church are welcome at 585-396-1370 or at our website, www.canandaiguauu.org. Producer and editor, Daniel Brigham.